Hi, my name is Jonathan Aldrich. Today, let's talk about dangling references. When an object is no longer live, we'd like to reclaim the space that it uses. Objects on the stack will be reclaimed when the corresponding function returns. There are several approaches, on the other hand, to reclaiming space on the heap. For example, if we allocated a pointer p in C, then we'll free it with the syntax free p. In C++, the syntax is delete p. We can also use automatic storage reclamation using either garbage collection, which will be covered in section 8.5.4 and my next talk, or automatic reclamation with ownership, section 8.5.5, the talk after that. Some languages, including C++, Rust, and Java, run a destructor function just before space is reclaimed in order to perform cleanup tasks. This can reclaim space for subsidiary objects that are used to implement a data structure. We can also remove the object that we're deallocating from indices or tables that it might be present in. And we might print messages to log that the object is being destructed. One problem can come out if we have a live pointer that no longer points to a valid object. This is called a dangling reference. In a language with explicit reclamation of heap objects, a dangling reference is created whenever the program reclaims an object, but there are pointers that still refer to it. So for example, look at the C++ code. We're allocating a new integer, we're assigning it to some value, we're printing it, we delete p, but then we try to dereference it again to print it out again. And this would be undefined behavior because star p has already been reclaimed. Dangling references can also be created when a subroutine returns if a pointer in the wider scope still points to a local object of that subroutine. So in this example, we have a top-level pointer, a top-level integer I. We have a pointer to that address I. But now we have a function foo. And let's say that we call foo. It allocates an internal integer n. And then it sets the pointer from the outer scope to point to the address of that local variable n. Now, when foo returns, then the pointer p will still point to the allocation site, to the space allocated for the integer n, and then if we dereference it, we'll have, once again, undefined behavior, because that value has been deallocated when the foo function returned. Unfortunately, dangling references can cause some severe security vulnerabilities. Once memory is freed, it could be used for other purposes, and then if we use a dangling reference, it might provide a way to read or modify data in a way that was unintended by the original programmer. Attackers can often exploit dangling references to, for example, cause a program to crash by writing data that breaks program invariance, perhaps exfiltrating data by reading information through a dangling reference that the attacker should not have access to, or even to take control of the program by writing the attacker's code into a dangling reference and then arranging for that to be executed, perhaps by overriding return value. There are several approaches that can be used to avoid dangling references. The first is automated storage reclamation with garbage collector or ownership. So if we use a safe language with garbage collection or ownership, then we have a guarantee that no dangling references will remain. If we're instead in an unsafe language, we can use runtime checking mechanisms. These include tombstones, lock and keys, and address sanitization. The latter two approaches may not catch all dangling references, however, but they can check most of them and usually find errors. Let's look at the tombstone approach first. So in the tombstone approach, a valid pointer refers to a tombstone that then refers to an object. So our pointers are indirected through these tombstone objects. When we deallocate a pointer, then we free the memory associated with it, but we leave a mark in the tombstone. Okay, rest in peace, pointer. At that point, then if we dereference the pointer, every time we dereference it, we check the tombstone and make sure that the dangling reference has not been expired. And if it is, then we'll raise a runtime error and let the programmer know, okay, you dereferenced a dangling reference, and so go find the bug in your program, right, and fix it. A second approach is that of locks and keys. This is similar at a high level to tombstones, but what we're going to do instead is we have what's called a fat pointer. So a valid pointer will contain the regular pointer, but it will also contain a key. And that key matches a lock that's stored in the object itself. And we use, some randomly allocated or pseudo-randomly allocated number for both the key and the lock, and they are supposed to match, right? And so if we, whenever we use the object, we check that the key in the pointer matches the lock on the object. But when we deallocate the object, we're going to set the lock to 0, right? So we never want to use a key that's 0. We'll set the lock to 0. That memory might be reused, but it's unlikely that we'll use the same value for the key when we reuse that object, or for, or any other thing that we put in that space will be unlikely to match the key, right? And so when we dereference the pointer when it's dangling, we'll find that the key doesn't match the lock with a very high probability, and we'll be able to once again signal an error. So compared to tombstones, we'll use more space in every pointer and more in the object header, but we'll avoid the extra pointer indirection, which can be expensive, and we'll avoid the extra space for the tombstone. One of the costs of locks and keys is there's a small chance of missing use of a dangling pointer, right? If somehow randomly that space got filled with exactly what the lock used to be and it matches the key, then we'll miss the dangling pointer. But that's quite unlikely. So locks and keys are a good approach. Let's check our understanding of dangling pointers.